Welcome to the Nerdstalgic podcast with your host, the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm.
Howdy beans, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Nerdstalgic podcast with me, your host Luke, as per usual. I'm hoping you're all well, as per usual. Today we're going to have a really fun and interesting episode, because today, well, not today, yesterday, or depends on when you're listening to this technically, I finally got round to watching the new Batman movie, Robin Patterson. I know it's taken me a very, very long time, and I do apologise for that. I'm not a true Batman fan, I know. It's all right. You send me all the hate that you want. It's okay. I can take it. I'm a big boy now. Before we get into that, just want to say follow me on Twitter for all updates and anything, so you know all the things that I'm doing, all things that I'm watching, all things I'm reading, all that jazz. It's Nerdstalgic_pod on Twitter. Follow me there. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to give me a like, subscribe, comment, and all that jazz. Really, really helps out a bunch. So yeah, into it. So, as I said, I'm going to be talking about the Batman movie, Robin Patterson. But before that, I want to do a bit of a story time. First part's not that interesting, really. Well, it might be. The second part is quite a bit more interesting, a bit more in depth that I wanted to mention before we get into the actual review. So to start us off, I wanted to give you the reason as to why I haven't seen this film up until quite recently. Mainly because I've been busy. As you know, when I did my yearly wrap-up episode and when I did my one-year anniversary episode, and I went through all the things that I'd planned. I had planned to buy the DVD of the Batman. I wanted to get it on Blu-ray. Never got around to it because the whole idea was that I was going to do a Batman month, and so I was going to do the first ever Batman sort of movie, which was the Tim Burton, Michael Keaton, and I was going to go from Michael Keaton all the way up to sort of modern day Batman and kind of rate all the Batmans to see who's the better Bruce Wayne, who's the better Batman, who's more gadgety, who's more sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? More physical, because like you'd say like Ben Affleck is a good Bruce Wayne, and I would say that Michael Keaton is a good Batman. You know what I mean? So I was going to do something like that, but I never really got around to it. Maybe in season 2 we can get around to doing that, and I can kind of bring in my thoughts and feelings on this movie, and we can still do it. But that was my original plan. But obviously, I took a big break during the summer. Then when I came back, it was like E3 and all that, and loads of different gaming news and video games and other sort of films came out. So I never got around to it, sadly. But I figured, starting off season 2, I'm going to put things right, and I'm finally going to get around to watching the Batman. So here I am. So the second part of story time is I want to talk about this thing that was floating around when this movie was announced, and when they were making it, and when they announced who was going to play Batman. I want to mention, I want to talk about the Twilight Boy situation. For anybody who doesn't know what that's from John Campea of the John Campea Show on YouTube. Check him out. He's fantastic. He talks about movies, and the whole team there are absolutely amazing. I love it. But he started talking about this whole thing called the Twilight Boy, because the reason where that comes from is the fact of, as we know, Robert Pattinson, he did the Twilight movies, and that is all he's really known for. Same with Daniel Radcliffe. Daniel Radcliffe is the Harry Potter boy. I know it doesn't work as well, but he's known for Harry Potter. So what Daniel Radcliffe did is that after Harry Potter ended, he went off and reinvented himself. He did Swiss Army Man, where he basically played a corpse that all it did was fart. He didn't really do anything. He just played a corpse, right? Fantastic movie, really great indie movie. Highly recommend that people go out and watch it. But it was one of them things that he just wanted to do something that wasn't Harry Potter, and then he went on and he did a movie. I can't remember what it was called. It was a fantastic film. But Daniel Radcliffe went off and he did a movie where he played a undercover cop in a white supremacist sort of gang, really, and that was really hard to watch because I grew up watching him in Harry Potter, and some of the themes and some things that he has to do is really sort of out of comfortability. But again, that's kind of the point. He went, I don't want to be Harry Potter. I don't want to be known as Harry Potter. And he's gone on and done a lot of great roles. I think the last movie I saw him in was called The Last City of um, something. I think called The Lost City or something like that with Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum. Fantastic movie, really really funny. He plays the villain in it. Really does it really really well. And now he's playing Weird Al Yankovic. You know what I mean? So he's reinvented himself. You know, so he's still known as Harry Potter boy, but you know he does other things as well. And I think that's what Robert Pattinson wanted to do because you know he was in Harry Potter as Cedric Diggory. Spoilers, he dies, and then not long after that he got picked up to do Edward Cullen in Twilight, and obviously we all know how big the Twilight movies were and how basically how much they became a bit of a joke really in cinema as they went on. Even though I'll be honest, I quite like the Twilight movies. I've never read the books, but I quite like the films. You know, I will admit they got a bit sort of cheesy as they went on, but again, so did the books according to my sister. So, you know, who could say did the movies get cheesier or did they just follow what the cheese that was already there? You know what I mean? Um, but I don't understand this whole sort of what people was talking about the whole Twilight boy. Like, yes, that's what he was known for, but he's done a lot since. But the problem, I think, the issue is, and it is a bit of a problem as well, that the reason people still think him as the Twilight boy because a lot of the things that he did after Twilight were not big blockbuster movies. They were very small indie movies. Like you wouldn't know about them unless you was a movie fan. You know, for example, a few highlights, right? So he did The Good Time, which is a really, really fantastic movie. Him and his brother's disabled, and that he and his brother basically, I think if I remember, they rob a bank, and it's kind of like it's like a life piece. It's like a slice of life sort of piece of like we only meet these characters at this one point in time, and as the story progresses, we realize where it's all gone downhill, why Robert Patterson is looking after his disabled brother, why he ropes his brother into doing these crimes, and why he's having to do these crimes in the first place. You know, it's a very interesting, fantastic movie, and Robert Pattinson does a fantastic job. Literally, he disappears into the role where you just forget that he's Robert Pattinson, that he is this character. It's a fantastic movie. Again, it's an indie title. Not many people would have heard of it, but highly recommend going out and watching Good Times. It's a fantastic film. He did another movie that I really, really liked called The Lost City of Z. I've read the book of this by David Graham or Graham. Can't remember how you pronounce his last name. But the premise of the book and the movie is kind of based off a true, well, it is based off a true story, really, but some of it is a bit more, you know, cinematic fluff, mainly because filling the gaps, the parts that we don't know. But basically, the book follows a guy called Percy Fawcett, who was an English explorer, and that he went off into the Amazon multiple times and he used to find loads of tribes. And as he went in to find all these tribes, he'd learned stories about this lost civilization deep in the Amazon. And he went out to go look for it. And basically, the book and the film is about him going out with his friend and his son to find this city, and they never returned. And then some people say they died, some people say they found it. You know, it's all sort of up in the air of what really happened. But he was in this movie, and it was only a small role. It wasn't a big role, but again, you just lost him. Again, he was wearing a beard, so it was kind of hard to tell unless you really like look at his eyes. You couldn't tell it was Robert Pattinson. But again, you lost him in the role. He wasn't there. You know, he did The Lighthouse, which I haven't watched, but I've heard The Lighthouse is an incredible movie. William Dafoe. I haven't got around to it yet. I want to watch it now because I've heard how good it is. You know, so that's another movie. Again, not very big. Not it's a black and white movie, and I've said this before about black and white films or films that are not in English. People aren't going to give them the time of day because it seems old or they just don't want to. You know what I mean? So another movie that people haven't watched that's meant to be incredible, that he's meant to be incredible in. I haven't watched the movie Tenet yet, but apparently he was really, really good in Tenet. Um, you know, so he's done a lot to kind of prove himself, not just to sort of us as viewers, as you know, fans, but also to the industry. Because again, the industry was the same thing. If you got to imagine if you're typecast as the pretty boy, and this kind of happened with Freddie Prinze Jr. I'm a big fan of Freddie Prinze, but I've listened to a lot of podcast interviews he's done and his own podcast as well. And he spoke about many times the fact that he was typecast as the quote unquote pretty boy, and that nobody would allow him to do anything serious or anything action related because, you know, he is quote unquote the pretty boy, and that's it. You can only do pretty boy roles. You can only do the love interest. You can only do the jock. You can only do, you know, what he was doing in most of his movies before he eventually quit Hollywood. And eventually, you know, things started to change. Hollywood is different now, but again, he's moved on, and he's only quite recently now coming back into doing sort of films again. But again, the same thing happened with Robert Patterson. He was known as Twilight Boy, and from there he just didn't get a lot of respect. So he went off and he basically rebuilt himself. He did these really indie sort of movies. He showed that he could act. He showed that he knew what he was doing. So by the time that Tenet came around, you know, the sort of director was like, well, yeah, Robert Patterson, he's a fantastic actor. I've seen him in a lot of amazing things. You know what I mean? Why not give him a go? And apparently he was really, really good in it. I haven't seen the movie Tenet yet, but I've heard that movie's a mindfuck. Pardon my language. But it's true. So he's proven himself to Hollywood. He's proven himself to the fans. He's proved himself to directors that, he is a serious actor. He should be taken seriously. And here he is now playing the Batman. Now, obviously, the reason I bring this up is just to kind of let people know that, I had that same sort of thought when I first heard of Robert Pattinson being sort of cast as Batman. I was like, Robert Pattinson, really? Twilight Boy? I had the same thought, and it wasn't until I thought, well, actually, a second, all the films I've seen him in, he hasn't, done anything like Twilight in a very long time. It'd be unfair to judge him. So when I probably sat down and thought about it, it made sense. And now I've actually watched the film, it makes tons of sense that this guy can act. He knows what he's doing. He's a fantastic actor. Matt Reeves does a fantastic job with the cinematography, with the direction. Andy Serkis, everything in this movie is just incredible. So you know what? I'm just going to shut up now, and I'm going to shut up, and I'm just going to get into the review because there's so much to talk about, and I'm really, really excited. But I just wanted to bring up the whole Twilight Boy situation because basically, I just wanted to. The reason I brought it up is because I feel like the whole judging people of what their past work. I think we shouldn't do that. Really, I think we shouldn't judge people on their past sort of work. Like if they're in Harry Potter, okay, they're a Harry Potter actor, but they're still an actor. You know what I mean? So I feel like we can't judge people on like one or multiple performances in one genre. We don't look at Robert Downey Jr. and go, Iron Man, man. Like, no, he's Robert Downey Jr. Granted, if I'm being completely honest, any other, apart from Tropic Thunder, any sort of film that he's done since Iron Man hasn't been very good. And he's always sort of like, because like, Doctor Dolittle wasn't that good that he did. Sherlock Holmes is really, really good. But again, for some reason, they haven't got around to making a third movie yet. I don't know why. I really like those Sherlock Holmes movies. And then he did another movie I think called The Lawyer or The Judge or one of those things. Again, great movie, great, fantastic sort of emotional sort of movie. Nobody went to go see it. Nobody knows it exists. You know what I mean? So he always seemed to find himself coming back to Iron Man. But again, yes, he is Iron Man, but you don't just think of Robert Jr. as just Iron Man. He's done other things as well. And I feel like that judgment should be sort of slowly should be washed away, especially now if when you get around to watching this movie, I don't think I'll see him as Twilight Boy anymore. I'll see him as Batman because that is who he is and that's who he is in this movie. He is Batman and he is Bruce Wayne and it's fantastic. Emo Bruce Wayne, emo Batman, but then again, if you know Batman, Batman is an emo. Batman is a very depressive soul. You know what I mean? So it kind of fits. But as I said, I'm going to stop sort of babbling now. I just wanted to sort of mention that for a bit of peace of mind and just to kind of open things up a bit. And just to make you guys aware that I know he was Twilight Boy, but he's different now. He's better now. So yeah, let's get into the review, shall we? All right, guys, let's get into it. Well, God, where do you start with this movie? It's just a masterpiece. Every frame is art. Everything about it is just perfect. 3 hours of pure hardcore Batman pleasure. You know what I mean? It's a proper nerdgasm movie. You know what I mean? It's just masterful. And I'm going to try my best to kind of break down certain parts of it as possible. One thing I do want to say right off the top is that I won't be talking about the story at all. You're probably thinking, hold on a second, Luke, why aren't you talking about the story? Simply put, one thing that I realized as I was watching this movie was that I wish I knew nothing. Because obviously, as movies are and as things happen with movies, they release, the characters who are going to be playing certain characters. Who's going to be playing the Riddler? Who's going to be playing Batman, obviously? Who's going to be Selena Kyle? Who's going to be the Penguin? Who's going to be Andy Serkis? And all that jazz. And it's one of those where it's a fact of the basics of obviously I want to know who Batman is, but like in terms of the villains and all that, I don't want to know who they are. Mainly because, as I mentioned, one of the things I realized as I was going through this movie is that the way it's shot and the way the story's told is that it's best to not know anything. It's like you're learning as Batman learns. This is a very detective movie. This is Batman as a detective. This is something unless you've read the comic books or played the Arkham games, this is something that we've never seen before in any Batman movie. This is a hardcore detective sort of 80s sort of movie, very much of like this is the killings, this is the murder, very Zodiac killer, very much like that. If you ever watch the movie Zodiac, of like this is the killing, this is the sort of serial killer. Here's each crime scene. We've got to piece together piece by piece and figure out how the murder was done and who the murderer is. And the enjoyment of that sort of narrative is that the less you know, like if you don't know who the actor is portraying the Riddler, it's even better because that means every single suspect is a suspect. Every single person is a suspect. You know what I mean? Like as you are basically put in the same shoes as Batman. You are along for the ride of like everybody that you see, like Batman, is a potential suspect. You look at everybody, you suspect everybody. You think everybody's up to something. Especially there's this one scene where it's in the trailer, so it's not really a spoiler. There's this one scene where there's a funeral, and Bruce Wayne, Robert Patterson, as Bruce Wayne, not as Batman, walks through this procession of people, and he's looking about left and right constantly. Like he's you can tell he's surveying everybody. He's looking at everybody. He's questioning, what's their motives? Who's there for good? Who's there for bad? Who's emotional? Who seems suspicious? You know what I mean? And it plays on that. It plays on that sort of those mind games of like you are basically the detective. You've got to figure out who the Riddler is. And I feel like if you know who the actor is playing it, it kind of ruins that tension because then you're looking for Paul Dano, who is the guy that portrays the Riddler in this movie. You're not looking for the average Joe. You're no longer looking. You're no longer thinking, well, it can be anyone. But well, no, it's not because none of these people here are Paul Dano. And I think that's the kind of issue. And it's the same with the stories. The fact if you go into this story knowing anything about the story other than it's a Batman story and that's it's detective and the Riddler's involved, I feel like it kind of ruins it. I was very lucky to stay away from any sort of major spoilers. Obviously, I know about the few major spoilers because that big sort of I won't say what it is, but if you listen to this, you probably saw it. It was released not long after the movie was released. I think Matt Reeves or somebody leaked a test footage that was done with a certain character that they didn't end up using in the film. But even so, I still found myself enjoying this movie. I'll be honest, it's 3 hours long, so it did take me a while to kind of watch it. I had to watch it in stages. I would watch it for a bit, take a break, go do something, come back, watch a bit more, go away. And like for some people, they can't do that, but for me, like it worked out so much better because I have such a busy schedule. I've got things to do for volunteering, and I've got my own sort of hobbies and my writing, and I want to spend time reading and something. So I can't always have so much time sitting down watching a 3 hour long movie, so I had to watch it in segments. But even so, I still got the full enjoyment of it. But the reason, coming back to the reason why I'm not talking about story, is I feel like the less you know about this story, the better. There's one thing I will tell you. This is basically Batman Year 2. So this is a Batman that's been doing the role for 2 years now. So he's not really a young being. He's a bit more sort of mature being. He kind of knows the layout and who he is and what he's doing. But he's still very green. He's still very new to the sort of the Batman role the persona that he's put on himself. So he's very brutal. He's very, very brutal, and I love that. I love a Batman that's brutal. Ben Affleck did a really good version of that Batman that was just brutal, and I love to see it. There's no sort of origin. There's nothing like that. There's no sort of like seeing his parents die because it's the same thing with Spider-Man. And I'm kind of reason why I'm glad they didn't do it in the MCU in those movies is because how many times have we seen Uncle Ben die? How many times do we have to see that? You know what I mean? It was heartbreaking the first time. I don't want to have to watch it again for a third, fourth, fifth time. You know what I mean? And it's the same with Batman's parents. How many times have I seen Batman's parents die? And I've seen it many times in the comics. I've seen it many times in games, in TV show, in movies. I'm done. I don't need to see it. I know the story, and even if you're not a Batman fan, you know his origin story because of how many Batman movies we've had, in the last 10, even 20 years. You know what I mean? Even more, from the 80s with Michael Keaton. Like, we know Batman's story, so we don't need to see that. So this one plonks you in straight in the deep end, really, of like, this is a Batman. He's 2 years into the job, and there you go for it. You know what I mean? And I love it. I love that being thrown in the deep end because, again, like I said, I'm a hardcore Batman fan. I know the ins and outs of Batman. So again, for me, I don't need to know to rehash it. I just want to get into it, and this movie does get into it, and it gets into it almost straight away. Really, proper hardcore. He just beats the crap out of some kids because they were trying to mug somebody. It's fantastic. I know it's weird to say, but if you're a Batman fan, that's what you want. That's what you go there for, and Matt Reeves constantly provides that. I mean, and even like I said, even if you're a casual fan, you don't need to know Batman's origins. You can go in this and just be like, okay, this is a different Batman, but and enjoy it. So that's why I'm not going to talk about the story. Is because I don't want to spoil it for anybody. Anything that I say in this film about this film could spoil it, even if it's a non-spoiler sort of thing. It's one of them movies where it's like it's a detective film, and it's better to go in knowing nothing. So obviously, even though I know I'm late, this movie came out last year, and there's a whole high potentiality whoever's listening to this has already watched it. But if you've already watched the movie and listened to my review, then you would probably understand what I'm saying. If you listen to the review and you haven't watched the movie, then I do sort of implore you to go off and watch the film because I won't be talking about any sort of story. And I know that might probably lose me some listeners. People might shut off at this point, and I understand that if that's what you want to do, that's completely fair. But as I was watching it, it just sort of made sense to me of like, if I talk about anything in this movie, it's just going to be spoilers and it's going to ruin the whole detective sort of discovering things out. So I just decided not to. So I do apologize for anybody who came to hear about the story. But like I said, it's out now on DVD. It's on streaming. If you live in the UK and you have Now TV, it's free. So go give it a watch there. That's where I watched it. I watched it on Now TV. So it's available everywhere. Definitely go check it out. It's a fantastic masterpiece movie, and I will say probably one of the best Batman movies I've seen in a very long time. Like I said, I know I keep bringing up Ben Affleck. I like Ben Affleck's Batman, but he wasn't my favorite Batman. I liked him for the brutality, but I didn't really like his Batman. I liked his Bruce Wayne, not really much of his Batman. But that's neither here nor there. That's a different topic for another day. Uh, Next thing I want to mention is that how beautiful this movie is. Like I mentioned, this movie is a masterpiece, and I don't just mean it in the fact of the story. This movie is art. This is like, obviously I know it's a weird comparison if you watch this movie and who I'm going to compare it to, but I'm a big fan of Wes Anderson. I love his movies. Each one of his films is basically an art exhibition of cinema. You know what I mean? And that's how I felt while I was watching this. Every scene, every single, like, if you could watch this movie in frames, right? And every single frame you could use as a poster for not just for this film, but generally just as just decoration. Every single thing, every shot is artistful. You know what I mean? Everything just feels straight out the comics. This movie was mostly shot. Some of the Arkham scenes were shot. If I remember correctly, I feel like it was in Scotland. I want to say Scotland, or it was Cardiff. I think it was Scotland. But like some of the shots were filmed in England, so there's some merging between English sort of architecture and the New York sort of Gotham sort of architecture, and I like that. I like that sort of mixed together. But visually, the aesthetics, it's eye candy. It's a real eye candy movie. Like I said, every scene, like moments where you have the, because this movie's dark, right? This is a movie, and this is how I watched it to get myself into the atmosphere, to get myself into mood. I watched this movie in the dark with candles. The candles mostly were just on to kind of give me a bit more ambience. Really, well, in all fairness, the candles were already on. I just had to turn the lights off to kind of add to the ambience. But like I said, I watched this movie in the dark with candles, and it really added to it. Especially, in those darker moments where you have sort of the bat, Robert Patterson's Batman as he appears out of the shadows, it kind of reinforces it a lot more. Because obviously, when I watch movies, I like to imagine myself that I'm in the cinema. I turn the lights off, and my only sort of point of light, my only sort of point of directional sort of visual stimulus is the screen in front of me. So I can't get distracted because I am easily distracted by a lot of things. So if I can sit in darkness and I can get as much as the experience as possible, put the sound bar on, get the full sort of cinema experience at home that I can, I will do it. And I really beneficial. So I had the amazing sound. The sound of the music was amazing. The sound effects were top notch. The SFX, all amazing. Everything seemed to be all practical. They only really did sort of the CGI when they really needed to, but everything else just looked so practical, like realistic. Even the moments that were meant to be horrific, whenever you had like the Riddler and you would see his crime scenes and the masterpiece that he would leave behind for Batman to solve, and you see all the different sort of bits of scribbles of writing and bits of like blood that had been saying, certain phrases and bits of newspaper clippings and all that. Like everything was just artful. Everything just looked like art. You know what I mean? I just had to sit here and be like, Matt Reeves has made art. Like if this movie was like, not this movie doesn't, but if this movie sucked, right? At least we could all sit there and go, this movie's gorgeous. It is. It's a gorgeous film. Like the costume designs. Oh God, the costume. Every costume is so amazing. Like even the thugs. Like you don't even look at the thugs. The thugs are there to be beaten up. You know, but they all look good. Each one of them's fantastic. There's this one sort of character that you only really see at the beginning of this movie, and he's not even a character. He's just a thug, really. It's Halloween. One of this character didn't even have a name, but a character basically robs the store, and as it robs the store, it comes out, and it's one of my favorite scenes in this film, among many. And again, this is not story or anything like that, where you had this sort of narration by sort of Robert Pattinson as Batman, basically explaining the whole idea of vengeance and how sort of people fear him. And this character comes out and he's got a mask on, which is like a scream sort of mask, but it looks like a gumdrop. It looks like a blob of rain, as it's falling for the sky. I don't know how to explain it really. And it's got like a scary face on it, and he's wearing like a big puffer jacket, and it just looks fantastic. It looks like, yeah, this is what a thug would look like. This is what a bad guy in the DC universe would look like in Gotham specifically. You know what I mean? Everything just looks aesthetically amazing. Even like Batman's outfit. Like I wasn't too sure about Batman's outfit when I saw the sort of release images that they put out of it, but he looks fantastic. The Batcowl looks fantastic. Yes, it looks a bit S&M-y, a bit BDSM sort of, gimpy. But I'm all here for it. You know what I mean? Like this is his second year. He's only been doing it 2 years. You know what I mean? Like he's going to reinvent his costume. He's going to reinvent his outfit. Batman's always learning, kind of like Iron Man. He's always learning. So anytime his suit fails him, or that he meets an enemy that throws something at him that he wasn't expecting, you'll be bet that his next bit of armor will have something in it which would then be able to counter that, so he could never be caught off guard. And I don't know what this suit's made out of, if it's like some next level sort of Kevlar, but he would just be running down halls and they'd be shooting him, and like he wouldn't be phased. He would just keep running. You know what I mean? It literally like he was Bane, like he was just getting shot to hell, down hallways, or they'd blast him like point blank with like 50, like not 50 cals, but like rifle ammo and pistols and machine guns, and it's just off him. Just you can see that the bullets, each bullet, like again, this is the special effects is amazing. How each bullet, you can tell each one where it hits him. It just flakes off. It's big sparks, and oh god, this movie's just gorgeous. 3 hours of just sort of Batman porn. I love it. I'm literally, it's such a gorgeous movie. That for anything is my favorite part of it. Just how beautiful it is, And again, that scene where like he's talking about, how since he came onto the scene, how villains fear him, how just the idea of him, the concept of him, they all fear the dark now. And it's this beautiful scene where each sort of, there's little scenarios of different sort of villains, different thugs doing things in Gotham that obviously they shouldn't be doing. Some of them are robbing stores, some of them are mugging people, some of them are spray painting on like banks and stuff like that. And they see the sign in the sky. It's that sign of like the bat's out, time to stop what we're doing, get back, and stop being a pleb. You know what I mean? And I love it because each one of them just looks up, and there's Matt Reeves is this absolutely incredible thing where as they look up, there's a helicopter going by with a spotlight, and each time they look up, the spotlight zones in on them, and basically tells them like, look, you know what I mean? We know where you are, and if we know, he knows where you are. You know what I mean? Um, so go home, stop, and it's a beautiful scene where each time that spotlight look comes on them and then moves away, they all seem to turn away and they look at at an open door that's like a black abyss. You know, there's no lights on or an alleyway that's pitch black or anything like that. They just look at like any moment that they're expecting the bat to walk out of it and basically beat the crap out of them. You know what I mean? Um, and it's absolutely, it's fantastically well done. And then when the bat sort of does appear, and like it doesn't take long for the Batman to appear, and when he does, he wrecks shop. He just beats the shit out of these guys, really. And it's fantastic. You know, it's straight out of the comic books. You know, there's no faffing about. There's no origin story. It's all artistful. It's gorgeous. It's like, here's the Batman. Here he is. Bam, boom, bop, pow, gone. He's gone into the night. The bad guys defeated. Some of them are up in the hospital. Batman doesn't use guns. He just puts people to sleep. Like some of these people getting hit. There's no way that some of them are getting up because this is a Batman that doesn't hold back his punches. Like he hasn't gotten to the point where, because obviously the Batman we see like in the Arkham sort of games, or the Batman we see in I'd even say Michael Keaton's Batman, and like even Christopher Bale's sort of Batman, he holds back. You can tell that he could knock somebody out with one punch very easily, but he holds back because again he wants them alive. He doesn't kill. But I'm sure the Batman could probably kill you in one punch if he wanted to. He knows pressure points and all different martial arts and fighting styles. Like if he wanted to knock you out, he could. And if he wanted to kill you, again, very easily. And again, we kind of see that with Ben Affleck's Batman. Ben Affleck's Batman was a Batman who, had gotten to the point where he was no longer holding his punches. Like if he's going to hit you, he's going to take you down, and that's it. You know what I mean? And again, Robert Patterson's the same sort of Batman where he is so full of rage, he's so full of emotion. Kind of, I can understand now people were saying that he's the emo Batman, because it does kind of make sense if you look at his suit and you look at basically how he acts, not just as Batman but as Bruce Wayne. That there are many moments where you could tell like he's not holding back, like he's going for it. Like every hit should either be a knockout or serious brain damage. There's multiple scenes where he's on top of guys and he's just punching them in the face, and I'm like, how hard he's hitting them and how fast he's hitting them. They should have no teeth left, no teeth, no nose, no face. He should have concaved the skull, but obviously he doesn't. But it's just that fact of like you could think like he's punching multiple times in the face. There's nothing left of that guy's face. That guy's face is spaghetti. His face is bolognese. Okay, you know what I mean? It's mincemeat. There's nothing left. It's bone dust mixing with what left of the brain and the eyes. You know what I mean? It's just mush. Obviously, it doesn't happen. They get up and go, oh, and then they run away. That's why people say he's not dead. He's just sleeping. You know what I mean? They were sleep bullets. You know what I mean? That was a sleep knife. Whenever like Batman, it was a skit on YouTube where we were like, I think Patton Oswalt was in it. He played the Penguin, and the Batman basically come in, killed all these henchmen, and he threw a batarang, and there's like that guy's literally bleeding. There's a there's a batarang in his neck. And he's like, no, he's not. He's not dead. He's just sleeping. I don't use guns. It's very campy, very cheesy. I love it. But yeah, this is a fantastic performance by Robert Pattinson. Completely, absolutely, completely, just mwah, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. that he's obviously, as you imagine, there are a few standouts, and obviously Rat Patterson is one of them. I don't think we can no longer call him the Twilight Boy. He is Batman now. That's it. Plain and simple. Like after watching this movie, not like the performance is incredible. His performance is impeccable. It's flawless. There's nothing about it where I wouldn't say that wasn't good, and there's nothing about it where I wouldn't say it was terrible. Everything was just flawless. It was perfect. When he was playing Bruce Wayne, when he was playing Batman. Now, yes, you could say he's a bit moody, a bit emo, but that's Batman. You know what I mean? And that's this version of Batman. This is Matt Reeves' version of Batman. He is very brooding. He's very sort of emo-ish. He's still a very young sort of Batman. He's only been doing this for 2 years. He's still learning. He's learning to, again, like I said, pull back his punches. He's learning basically how to be not just Batman, but how to be Bruce Wayne, and how they're still converging. This is a Bruce Wayne that hasn't realized that he needs to be both Bruce Wayne and Batman, because there's places that Bruce Wayne can go where Batman can't, and vice versa. There's places where Batman can go but Bruce Wayne can't. He hasn't learned that, so his personalities are basically one in the same at the moment. So I would assume by the time we get to Batman 2, because there will be one. I know there have been talks to make a second one. Hopefully by the time we get to Batman 2, or whatever they call it, he's sort of learned to, when he's Bruce, to lighten up a bit, to be the playboy, to be the philanthropist, to billionaire, that word, you know what I mean? And then when he's Batman, then he can be sort of the vengeance, he can be the emo, that sort of thing. But, that's just nitpicking. But even if to nitpick, I'm still not dogging Robert Patterson's performance. Robert Patterson's performance is impeccable. It's incredible. He is now Batman. He's not Twilight Boy. He's Batman. He's vengeance. You know what I mean? And that's the way he will be now in my mind. Simple. But like, he did Twilight, yes, but that's Batman. No, you can't change that in my mind. Other person I want to mention is Paul Dano as the Riddler. Very Zodiac killer. Very Zodiac killer. And I love that. I love sort of the Zodiac. I'm very fascinated in that sort of person or people, or obviously we never found out who the Zodiac killer was, but that whole sort of story fascinates me. I love the movie Zodiac. I love that they took it in that route where he's very sort of, serial killer, because again, that's the Riddler. We've had the sort of campy, sort of jokey Jim Carrey Riddler, we've had sort of the, again, jokey but somewhat serious Riddler in the Gotham TV show. This is a more sort of realistic sort of Riddler, of like, if the Riddler was to exist, this is what he would be like. Obviously exaggerated in some parts, but this is kind of what a person could be led to if they went down certain paths, or certain things happened in their life to kind of get to those sort of avenues. I've said for a long time, and I mostly said it very quietly because nobody's listened to me, Paul Dano is an underrated actor. There's not a single movie that this guy hasn't been in where he hasn't been a standout in every single scene he's in. Like, I'll give you an example, right? He's in a movie with Tom Hanks and Cameron Diaz called Night and Day. He's not in it a lot. He plays a character called Simon. You mostly see him more so at the end, right? But even though you don't get a lot of him, you still remember him because his performance is that well. I don't remember a lot about that movie, but I remember Simon. I remember his name. I haven't seen that movie in years, but I remember his name, Simon, and who he is, and that he's an intelligent bloke who invented a brand new battery that's meant to revolutionize the world. You know what I mean? I haven't seen that movie in a long time. It's not really that great of a film, but I remember Simon because of Paul Dano. You know what I mean? And that's the point I'm trying to sort of convey here, is the fact of every single film this guy's in, you remember his performance because he is a master. He's an underrated actor. And anytime I watch a movie and he's in it, I stop and I pay attention because this guy is creating art. You know what I mean? He is incredible. He really, really is. Like, one of my favorite movies he's in. Oh God, what I think it's Prisoners. with I'm trying to remember, Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal. That's a fantastic movie as well. Oh, it's so good. Another movie to watch. Um, but Paul Dano's in that film, and he doesn't have much. He doesn't say a lot. He doesn't do a lot. It's what happens to him in the film. I won't spoil it for anybody who hasn't watched it, but it's what happens to him in the movie where you're like, Jesus Christ, this guy, you know, the performance is just like that movie's good. Again, another underrated sort of movie that doesn't get talked about a lot. The whole cast is really good in it, but Paul Dano, chef's kiss. This guy, um, again, when it was announced that he was going to play Riddler, a lot of people joked, Paul Dano, who's that? And I'm like, do you guys not watch cinema? Are you not movie fans? Do you not know how good of an actor this guy is? This guy is incredible. You know what I mean? And it was another one of those where people heard like Robert Pattinson was going to be Batman straight away. It's Twilight, boy. Nobody gave Robert Pattinson a shadow of a doubt because they only knew him from Twilight. You know what I mean? It's the same with Paul Dano. Nobody gave him, like, people laughed, but those that knew what Paul Dano could do was not surprised. And when I watched this movie, I was like, I'm not surprised how good this performance was. He scared me. There's a scene right at the beginning when he just appears and he just stands there. He just stands there. He doesn't do anything. He just stands there, semi-darkness, semi sort of in the light. You only get an outline of him, but it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. But he does such a fantastic job in this film. There are times where, like, if I didn't know it was Paul Dano, when he's wearing the mask, I wouldn't know who he is. He masks his voice so well. The voice he uses when he's got the Riddler costume on is so different to his actual voice. So when you actually see him as, his character as Edward, without sort of the costume, when he's, at the end of the movie, he has his voice back, and it's like that. It doesn't seem like you were just that person, that costume, but it was the same person. And his performance, you just get lost in it. Generally, it's the fact of, oh wow. And again, it's back to what I was saying about the story. It's the fact of, I wish I didn't know that Paul Dano was in the role, because that would have been such a treat to kind of get to the end of the film, and that reveal of, like, it's Paul Dano. I was like, what? Wow. Because it would have been more impactful to me as a fan of cinema and as a fan of Paul Dano. It would be like, this guy's good, and this guy is good, and I feel like he should. I feel and hope now he'll be on more people's radar. I really, really do, because he's just an impeccable actor. He really is. And the last sort of standout, like, this is just I've only got three here, like three people I wanted to mention because they simply blew me away. But the cast, like, everybody in this movie, everybody to background actor, like, well, not even background actors, but like the Penguins sort of thugs, all the way up to, like, Batman, and sort of, Andy Serkis as sort of as oh god, I forgot his name now, Alfred. You know what I mean? Everybody who's in this movie is perfectly cast. Nobody's cast wrong. Everybody does a fantastic job. But I wanted to mention these three people, and like the last person I wanted to mention is Colin Farrell as the Penguin. Now, if you watch this movie and you don't know that's Colin Farrell, you will not know that's Colin Farrell, because it doesn't sound like him. It doesn't look like him. Now, granted that he's put prosthetics on, and but usually even with prosthetics, you can still tell that's who they are. Like with the Grinch, Jim Carrey sat for, I think it was like 8 hours in sort of a special effects chair for him to be turned into the Grinch. But you can still tell by looking at his eyes, looking at his facial expressions, that that's Jim Carrey, right? Even under all that makeup, you can still see Jim Carrey, because it's still Jim Carrey's mannerisms. It's still Jim Carrey's sort of facial expressions, and you can see it in his eyes. That's with me. I'm really good at looking at somebody's eyes and just telling who they are. But in this movie, no matter how many like, this movie does give you a chance, and it does, like Matt Reeves with the cinematography, there are many times where he sort of zooms into the character's eyes, and there are many times you get given the chance to look into a character's eyes, and I was looking into Penguin's eyes, and I couldn't see Colin Farrell at all. If you told me that was Colin Farrell, I would have told you to jump off a bridge because you were lying to me. That's not true. You know what I mean? Like that. The performance is incredible. I can't tell it's Colin Farrell. It doesn't sound like him. Obviously, it doesn't look like him. There's not a single moment where like he never drops the accent. If he's screaming, if he's shouting, if he's joking around, like there's never a moment where he loses the accent. It's another thing. Like Colin Farrell, fantastic actor, highly underrated, and that's a true statement. Again, fantastic actor, underrated. Um, but he gets so lost in this show, and I'm sitting there going, I know it's Colin Farrell, but I don't believe it. I even watched the behind the scenes video, right? And there was I think Matt Reeves put the video out of Colin Farrell in the makeup chair, of him coming into the makeup room as Colin Farrell, and then putting the prosthetics on and changing it and putting a fat suit on, and he changes into the Penguin. And I've watched that video, and even so, after the end of it, I'm like, yeah, it's like Colin Farrell. So it's his performance and the makeup, win-win, bar none, perfect. He disappears into the role. I've never seen that before in cinema, and I don't think I ever will again. It's just the performance and the visual aesthetics and physical aesthetics really works perfectly. Just chef's kiss, perfect. And that's what makes me come down to this movie. It's just everything about it. Yes, it's 3 hours long. Yes, I had to watch it in breaks because I couldn't sit for 3 hours and watch it. But that doesn't matter. I still enjoyed myself. This is cinema. Yes, it's a comic book movie. Yes, it's a superhero movie, but it's art. And there were moments where I was creeped out. There were moments where I felt uncomfortable. There were moments where I felt genuinely somewhat fearful, for the villains. I was generally like, whoa, I'm cringing because, the Batman's not holding back. Robert Patterson, he's not holding back. He's literally every single scene when he's fighting, he's going for it completely. And I'm getting a bit comfortable, like, whoa, maybe you should pull your punch back a bit. Gonna cause a bit too much damage there, Bruce. You know what I mean? Like this movie's making me feel sorry for the villains. You know what I mean? And that just says a lot. Where it's like I'm to so many different emotional levels where I don't know what to feel. Because I'm feeling sort of scared, but then I'm feeling overjoyed. Then I'm feeling sort of like I'm sitting there going, no, not this person, no, not that person. Oh my God, that's Paul Dano. That can't be Colin Farrell. Oh wow. And then there's a scene after scene after scene where it's just oh gorgeous. This film is just wonderful. Really, really is. And it makes sense to me why they want to do a Penguin spin-off. I don't know if you've heard about this. I think they're still doing it, but the plans are that they're going to do a sort of spin-off, sort of sequel TV show based off Colin Farrell's Penguin, and that whatever the events that happened, or should I say happened, because it hasn't happened yet, that will happen in that show will lead into whatever Batman 2 is going to be. I think Matt Reeves said that recently, like whatever they decide to do with the Penguin TV show, the events and the end of that will then lead into kind of how sort of Batman 2 will play out. I don't know where the next movie will go. I don't know what they're going to do for the Penguin series, but I tell you now, I'm excited. I really, really am. And I really hope that they keep this Batman and this universe out of the new DC. Like I've said it for a long time. Like I love Marvel, I really do. I love the MCU, and I even love DC. I prefer the comics to the movies, but I'll watch the films. But even so, like I love what they're doing, but I feel like when you decide to do a sort of universe, the problem is every film after that, after the next, has to kind of conform to what plots and what stories beats you've already sort of laid out. You know what I mean? So you can't bring in new directors and just say go wild. You have to bring in a director and go, you can go wild, but just make sure it follows this path. And make sure this character stays alive because we've got this character. We're planning on doing another 10 movies with this character. Or make sure that this character, has this sort of end resolution so that we can do this story. Or, you can't do that because in this movie we said this sort of technology doesn't exist. Or, I'm just making up things on the spot. But that's the kind of problem is when you have sort of conjoined universes, the less freedom you have when you want to do certain stories, because you're kind of constrained to the actual timelines or universe you're creating. Whereas in the comic books, the way they dealt with that, where they did Elseworld stories, like for example, you couldn't do in the modern MCU, or you couldn't even do in the modern DCU, for example, sort of the Batman's, I can't remember what it's called, but the story where Superman basically, instead of landing in America, he lands in Moscow, in Russia, during the Soviet era, and he becomes a completely different character. You couldn't do that in the modern sort of DC sort of films, because it just wouldn't work. It would confuse people, and it would still be a Superman movie, but it would be all Russian, and it just wouldn't work. Um, because then you'd have to stick with a Russian Superman for the rest of the universe, and obviously, they don't going to want to do that. They're going to want a sort of American sort of Superman. So these Elseworld stories allow us to see alternate stories of our alternate sort of situations for the comic book writers and the storytellers to go as big as bombastic as they want, because they know they haven't got nothing to worry about. They can kill off 20 different characters in the one series if they want to. It doesn't matter, because it's got nothing to do with the overarching story they're going to tell. One of my favorite stories is Old Man Logan, because in that story a lot of people die. A lot of superheroes are already dead, and a lot of the heroes and villains that are already alive, they die. Doesn't mean anything. I know it doesn't mean anything, when certain characters die, because I know that that's not part of this world, or it's not part of this sort of storyline that I'm used to. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what I mean, is the fact of I like these Elseworld stories, these different sort of slices of life. Of like, this is Batman, but this is Batman. This is not Batman in the DCU. This is just Batman in Gotham. That's it. And it was the same with the Joker movie. This is a Joker movie. This is nothing to do with Batman. You know, a lot of people said, "Oh, well, you can't have Joker without the Batman." No, 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 no. You can, and it's been done many times in the comic books as proof. And it's proven. Like, I think didn't the Joker make like $1 billion at the box office? I'm sure that movie made a lot more money than people thought it would, and they're making a sequel now. It's going to be a musical. You know what I mean? So I love these sort of stories where they go away from sort of the overarching universe and just tell a story. That's all you have to do. I would love to see Superman Kingdom Come as its own story. Would we ever see it? I don't know. But I would like to see the Kingdom Come story with an older, more mature, older sort of Superman who, has been doing the job for decades now. He knows what he's doing. He's a veteran, and to get that Kingdom Come story, I'd love that, But if you was to do that in a universe, you would take you multiple movies and multiple story threads you'd have to sort of sew into other films and with other characters to really get to that point, because that is like a Thanos level sort of Kang the Conqueror sort of moment. Whereas if you just was like, we're just going to do a standalone Kingdom Come movie, it's got no ties to anything. Like, you could bring in a brand new Superman, you could bring in a brand new cast. It doesn't have to match with whatever Superman James Gunn decides to choose. Because a lot of people are saying now with this Batman movie with Robert Patterson, well, is Robert Patterson part of the new DCU? Obviously, we don't know yet. I really hope it's not. I really hope that James Gunn comes out and say, no, we're doing our own Batman, because what that does, that leaves it free to being like, this is the DCU, EU, or whatever they want to call it, Batman. Let's say, for example, it's Jake Gyllenhaal. This is Jake Gyllenhaal. This is the Batman for the DCU, but here's the Robert Pattinson Batman for the Matt Reeves universe. Two characters exactly the same, but in a different universe, and one's like an 18, for example, and one's family friendly. You know what I mean? That's and that works, and I feel like that's what I'd rather see, and I'd like to see them do that with other characters. I'd like to see a hardcore, grizzled, old Superman. Kind of like a Superman that kills. I'd like to see that. And they tried to make a horror movie out of it, which wasn't a Superman movie, but it was kind of like the Superman sort of story. I can't remember what it was called. I think it was by Sean Gunn's brother. I think he wrote it and directed it, but the point is I'm trying to make is the fact of, as an Elseworld story, as a Batman story told on its own or anything else, it works perfectly. And whatever they decide to do next, I'm up for. As long as they keep it on its own, great. They've already hinted that there's other characters going to be appearing, which is fantastic. That means again, whatever they decide to do with like other characters, other Batman characters in the Rose Gallery, if they want the same, if they wanted their own Riddler, they can do it. They could have Neil Patrick Harris if they wanted to, because I know a lot of fans have been asking for Neil Patrick Harris, should I say, as the Riddler. So they could have that. They could bring him in as the Riddler to the Jake Gyllenhaal Batman. The options there, and I love that. I love that idea of having two slices of cake. I love both slices of cake, and I'll eat both of them, but I'm like that they're separate. I got my chocolate cake over here, and I got my strawberry cheesecake here. I love both of them, but I don't want them together because that's too much. That's sickly, But on either sides of the table, I can eat in and out. Oh, I fancy a bit of cheesecake. Oh, I fancy a bit of chocolate cake over here. I can decide. I like having the choice. Whereas if it's all together, it's a mush. It's really sickly, oversaturated, and I'm like, well, I kind of liked it when it was on its own. You know what I mean? Like I'll eat it, but I'm going to be sick. It's too much, too rich. And that's the point I'm trying to get at here, is the fact I just like what they're doing here. So whatever they decide to do with the Penguin show, I'm here for. Whatever they decide to do for the Batman 2, I'm here for. Whatever villains they decide to bring into it, most likely it will probably be some sort of Joker, sort of Arkham sort of thing that they'll do. But I would like to see a villain that we haven't seen really before. You know what I mean? I would like to see, we've seen Bane. What about, you know, the Mad Hatter? I think the Mad Hatter would work perfectly in the Matt Reeves universe, because we've proven with the Riddler that we can go psychotic, that we can go serial killer, that we can go mental, we can go crazy. Who better than the Mad Hatter? And taking Bruce on a sort of Alice in Wonderland sort of hippie sort of out of body experience trip. Get Robert Patterson's high on off his head. We've had the Scarecrow. Let's get the Mad Hatter in. The whole Alice in Wonderland sort of thing. I think Matt Reeves would do a fantastic job with that. There's so many other characters in the Rose Gallery that we haven't seen portrayed. I want to see a proper portrayal of them, and I feel like in the world that Matt Reeves is building, you could have the Joker in there, but I don't want him to be the main villain. I would like him to be a side villain. If you're going to do the Joker, do him in the third movie. Build up to the Joker. But for the next one, if they which they are planning to do in the next one, I'll put my coin, my hat, my nerd sort of reputation on the line here and say that I would like to see a Mad Hatter, or somebody on the level of the Mad Hatter, somebody who's psychotic but also just realistic enough where it's like they could exist, but it's not too overly sort of crazy, but still kind of keep it comic booky. There's another character in my head as well, but I forgot his name, and I'm really blanking on the name. But to give you a description of it, it's an old man, and he's got a puppet, and the old man doesn't really talk. The puppet does all the talking, and the puppet's like a little mob boss. He's got a little suit and everything, and he has a little gun, and it's great. I can't remember what the character's called now, but that would be great as well. An old guy with a ventriloquist dummy, and the old guy doesn't talk, but the dummy does all the talking. And he's in a little suit and he's dressed as a mob boss. I love it. You know what I mean? Like that would work as well. That would be great. I'm blanking on the name. I'm sure any fan listening to me now is going to be like, the name is so and so. It's so and so. You're shouting at me. I know. I do apologise. But whatever they decide to do, I'm all here for. I love this movie. It's so simply gorgeous, and this is the second time that a Batman sort of film has really made me uncomfortable. The Joker, like that movie, I love it. I got it on DVD. I've only watched it once because once was enough. I loved it, but it made me uncomfortable so much in so many different ways, and I haven't got the time to explain it all. But this movie made me uncomfortable as well. Not as uncomfortable as the Joker, but there were moments where I was like, yeah, this movie's creepy. This movie's great. I love it. Unlike the Joker, though, I'll happily watch this again. The Joker, I feel like one is enough for me. But I've got it on DVD just in case I change my mind. Maybe I'll watch it once a year. I'll put it on. I love it. It's great. Or when they get round to releasing the second film. Before the second film comes out, I'll rewatch the Joker again and sort of give my views on it. But yeah, overall, fantastic movie, outstanding, masterpiece. Robert Patterson is no longer Twilight Boy. He is now the Batman, and he will always be the Batman in my mind. Colin Firth disappears. Paul Dano, incredible, amazing sort of casting for him as the Riddler. He's amazing as a villain in general. And overall, this movie is just masterful. Yes, it's 3 hours, but it's 3 hours of Batman porn. It's 3 hours of superhero goodness. You know, dark justice. I am the night. I'm Batman. You know, I love it. I love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. And you better believe that, you know, I was sitting there going, I'm Justice. I'm Batman. Where is she? Where is she? Why did you say that name? That was a different Batman. Where's the girl? That's my Christian Bale Batman. I practice it a lot, as you can tell. Where is she? I am the night. I'm not the man that Gotham needs. I'm the man that Gotham. Or is it? I'm not the man that Gotham deserves. Or so I assume it was like that. It's been a while since I've seen The Dark Knight, to be honest. But I love it. Where's Harvey? Where is she? Rachel. Why? Sorry, I'm probably blown out somebody's speakers now. But yeah, you know, I'm going to end it now. But overall, before I get to an ending, before I stop being really nerdy and goofy, my final rating for this film is a 10 out of 10. It's perfect. In my eyes, it's masterful. It's masterclass. It's just it's artistic. You know, it's cinematographic. I was going to be cinematographic, but that's not a word. It's cinematic. Everything about it is just chef's kiss. You know. So overall, 10 out of 10. Watch it, recommend it. If you're a Batman fan, you'll love it. Even if you're not a Batman fan, it's just 3 hours of action goodness. You know, it's creepy, it's actionful. You know, there's romance a little bit. There's a little bit of everything in this film. It's dark, it's depressing, but it's, you know, there are moments of joy and there's moments of like revitalization for the character. There's something in it for everybody. So you'll love it. You'll probably get a bit uncomfortable, but it's fantastic. So I'm going to end it here. And then we're going to go straight to the ending and wrap things up nicely. But that's the end of my thoughts and feelings of the Matt Reeves, the Batman, with Twilight Boy, who's now Vengeance. So yeah, Beans, that is it. That is my Batman review. As you could tell, I really enjoyed the movie. Absolute masterpiece. Robert Patterson is now Justice. He is no longer Twilight Boy. Well, I don't know why. Whenever I do that, my hands come up in like jazz hands, and I have to like twinkle them like Twilight Boy. I don't know why. But yeah, he is now Justice. He is now Batman to me, and always will be. Have you seen the new Batman movie? Well, you know, or you haven't, or if I'm being completely honest, most people have mostly likely seen this by now. I am more than likely the last person to get around to watching this movie, because it was a big deal last year. Like I remember when this film came out and everybody was talking about how good it was. So there's potentiality who's ever got this far in the review has watched this film so far. So I'm probably just the last one. But if you haven't watched it, you know, let me know your thoughts and feelings. You know, I'd happily hear. I want to hear everybody's views. You know, do you agree with what I say? You disagree? Do you feel like, you know, this movie's not a masterpiece? Do you agree with me that's a masterpiece? You know, all that sort of jazz. Let me know on Twitter on my handle, the Nerdstalgic Podcast. You can also find this podcast on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music Podcasts. You can find me on Audible. You can find me on YouTube, and if you're listening to YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and all that jazz. Really helps me out. I'm hoping for season 2 to reach, season 2, year 2. I'm hoping to reach, maybe if I'm lucky, 100. I'm currently at 57 subs, so if we can reach 100 by the end of the year, that'd be fantastic. So yeah, fingers crossed. You beans are gonna help me get there. And Yeah, also, if you're listening to this on Spotify, don't forget to give me a rating, a star rating from 1 to 5 stars. If you go to my profile, there's a little box of stars, and you can click on that, and it will give you the option of 1 star to 5 stars. 5 stars, again, being the best thing you've heard in your life. You love my voice that much. You really just want to go out and take me out on a date and treat me to all the luxury amenities. That you can afford because my voice is just silky smooth. And 1 star being shut up monkey boy, my ears are bleeding, Vogon's doing poetry, you know what I mean? That sort of thing. So whatever you feel like is fair, 1 to 5 stars, it really does help. I think currently I'm at 17 reviews, all 5 star. I'm going to jinx it now. I'm going to give somebody's going to give me a 4. But so far pretty well. But I appreciate it whoever does it. For all those 17, a lot of you that have done it, I really do appreciate it. It really does help immensely. You don't understand. But yeah, so that's everything really. That's all I have to say. I hope you all enjoyed the review. Hope you all liked it. Season 2, hopefully, is going off great. Hopefully, people are enjoying it. I'm recording a lot of my season 2 episodes before I even actually launch season 2. So as of recording this, I don't know if season 2 has gone well or not. I hope so. My first review I know I'm going to be posting is Callisto Protocol, and I can say that because, well, I've already planned that that'll be the first thing that I'm going to be posting. So fingers crossed that's well received. I know it's a bit late, but it's still somewhat relevant, somewhat recent, unlike this Batman review, which is like a year late. But I finally got around to it. There's other things I've got to get around to. I've got the new bloody Fantastic Beast movie to watch and review, so that should be a fun one whenever I get around to that one. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun in season 2. So stay around, stay tuned, and just hopefully enjoy it. So as per usual, I am Luke, your host, and thank you very, very much for listening to the Nerdstalgic podcast. It has been an absolute pleasure, as always. I love you all, my precious beans, and I will see you, beans, in the next one. All right, beans, bye-bye. How many times have I got to say beans? I said it a lot there. All right, I'm really going now. Bye-bye, beans.